Josh readily agreed to Susan's request for a place to stay, but then proposed a somewhat peculiar condition. He wanted to be on top tonight. Understanding the implication in Josh's words, Susan's cheeks flushed slightly. After washing up, she tried various poses, hoping Josh would be satisfied. However, Josh quickly climbed up to the top bunk. Turns out on top just referred to the position of the bed. This action left Susan confused. Josh was not unaware of romantic cues. He just appeared mature while actually being only 12 years old. As for the origin of that adult body, it traced back to that night when he encountered a magical wishing machine. The machine was not plugged in but operated on its own. Following the instructions, Josh inserted a 25-cent coin and the puppet swallowed the coin. Due to his small stature, he had been rejected multiple times by the girl he liked and was also unable to ride the roller coaster at the amusement park due to height restrictions. For this reason, he wished to grow up faster. The machine then spit out a card that read, "Wish granted." Josh thought this was just a boring prank and didn't take the card seriously. But he had no idea that this would open up a wonderful journey. That night, as the wind and rain raged outside, with thunder and lightning, Josh slept soundly. He was completely unaware that his body was quietly changing. The next morning, Josh got up as usual, but felt a vague discomfort until he stood in front of the mirror and saw a stranger reflected back. His suddenly grown body terrified him. He couldn't believe that yesterday's wish had come true. Not only had his face matured, but hair was faintly growing on his chest, and every part of his body had developed into an adult state. He didn't dare tell his mother about this and wanted to get dressed first, but his original clothes were too small. In desperation, he hurriedly put on some of his father's clothes, avoiding his family's gaze as he rushed out, hoping to find that wishing machine to return to his original state. When he arrived at the amusement park from yesterday, he only saw trash everywhere. The rides from the day before were nowhere to be found. With no other option, he had to go home and explain to his mother. Even though he told her his birthday and favorite baseball team, his mother completely didn't believe him. He tried to show his mother the birthmark on his butt, but she saw him as a pervert trying to kidnap her son and even picked up a kitchen knife to fight him off. This forced Josh to flee in panic. Seeing he couldn't rely on his parents, Josh quietly went to school to find Billy. Billy was his childhood friend, and he believed Billy would surely recognize him. But when a stranger suddenly appeared and tightly grabbed him while babbling, Billy nearly wet himself in fear. After breaking free from Josh's grasp, he desperately shook the locked door, crying and begging Josh not to take him away. Suddenly grown-up Josh was equally panicked and urgently needed help. In a moment of inspiration, he thought of a unique way to verify his identity. Josh started nodding his head and humming a nursery rhyme, the tune awkward and the lyrics difficult to understand, with exaggerated and strange expressions and movements. Surprisingly, Billy couldn't help but hum along. This was a song that belonged only to the two of them. Billy finally believed that the stranger before him was indeed his friend Josh. After confirming their identities, the two immediately returned to Josh's house, only to find it packed with police and onlookers. It turned out that Josh's mother had called the police, claiming her son had been kidnapped, and the pervert in the blue hoodie was wanted as a result. Initially hoping to use Billy to prove his identity and bring Josh home, the situation became increasingly serious, and they had no choice but to temporarily leave. To help Josh hide his identity, Billy brought his father's clothes, allowing Josh to change at an abandoned pipe. After learning about the wishing machine, Billy suggested that Josh go to New York for a few days to avoid trouble and then look for the wishing machine when the opportunity arose. The two headed to the station. While waiting for the train, Billy handed all the savings he had gotten from his father to Josh, hoping it would help him through the tough times. Thus, the two took a train to bustling New York. The night in New York, with its wandering madmen, sex workers soliciting business, and persistent beggars, filled these two inexperienced boys with fear. Due to limited funds, they could only find a cheap motel to stay in. Since Billy had to return home by 10 o'clock at night, he could only leave Josh alone. After Billy left, Josh immediately locked the door, but the sudden sound of gunfire made him shudder. Thinking he was safe after closing the windows, he was startled by the intense argument outside. The negative energy of the adult world hit Josh's 12-year-old understanding for the first time. He hurriedly used a cabinet to barricade the door, then jumped onto the bed, frozen in fear. Standing at 6 feet 3 inches, Josh curled up on a 5'9" bed, covered himself with a blanket, and cried out for his mother all night. The next day, truant Billy found Josh, and the two began to inquire about the whereabouts of the wishing machine. However, After searching all the entertainment venues, they found no similar machines. A kind-hearted person suggested they contact the Consumer Affairs Department, as they might be able to find information about the amusement park operator. They hurried there, only to be skillfully handed an application form by the front desk and told that the fastest response would take 6 weeks. Josh couldn't understand why 6 weeks in the adult world felt so long. Frustrated, he sat on the steps in a daze, unsure how to spend the next 6 weeks. Billy suggested that Josh should find a job first, both to experience the adult world and because living for 6 weeks would require quite a bit of spending. The two visited places their parents had previously forbidden, tasted foods they couldn't enjoy before, and browsed job advertisements in the newspaper. Suddenly, a job listing from a toy company caught Josh's attention. Upon learning that there were toys involved and that they could get paid, the two became excited and eagerly went to the company for an interview. They even fabricated their resumes on the spot. Regarding computer operation experience, Josh directly wrote 4 years. Actually, he just played video games for 4 years. Despite filling out even the fabricated social security number incorrectly, the two interviewers showed no signs of suspicion. When the interviewers saw his fictitious degree from the University of Washington, they immediately became interested and mentioned that their brother also graduated from that school. Although the conversation between the two was somewhat disjointed, the interviewers felt they had a pleasant chat and issued a job offer on the spot. Thus, Josh got his first job in life. The job involved entering customer information into the computer system, which was a piece of cake for him with 4 years of video game experience. On his first day at work, Josh was full of enthusiasm, but an older employee reminded him that to maintain a long-term position in this department, he needed to slow down the work pace. Josh was even more confused. Why do adults always like to waste time? The adults he remembered were capable of anything, but the adults he saw in person seemed to do nothing. As a result, the overall work efficiency of the company was extremely low, and the boss had been troubled by this for many years, not expecting to bump into the energetic Josh around the corner. However, the boss not only did not reprimand him, but said that the toy company needed such vitality and passion. After returning to his seat, Josh was unsure how to explain the situation to his parents, so he contacted his mother as if he were a kidnapper. He stated over the phone that this was just a special journey arranged for her son, and he would safely return him afterward. His mother became very emotional upon hearing this and sternly warned the other party that if her son was harmed in any way, they would face the consequences. Hearing his mother's words, Josh felt a wave of warmth. He knew that his mother would always be his most steadfast supporter. In the following days, Josh gradually got used to a life without parental supervision. He could eat only the filling of sandwich cookies and casually throw away the leftover cookies. He could watch TV without restraint, and no one stopped him even if he sat too close. He was no longer afraid of the neighbors' quarrels, and the gunshots outside had long become routine. The first week passed like this, and Josh received his first paycheck in life. Although it was only $187, it was an unprecedented fortune for him at 12 years old. After work, he and Billy immediately went to the bank to cash the paycheck into coins. Then, the two bought all the snacks they wanted to eat and the toys they wanted to play with, indulging in eating and playing on the hotel floor. Josh had never felt so carefree. At the same time, he understood why adults never picky eat, because they only buy the food they like. On the weekend, Josh went to Toy City, intending to look for a wishing machine, but he became immersed in the world of toys. Every toy captivated him, releasing the purest childhood innocence. Although he seemed a bit abnormal in the eyes of others, he didn't care about their gazes and even played gunfight games with strange kids. Just as he pretended to be shot and fell to the ground convulsing, the company boss suddenly appeared in front of him. The boss recognized him as the employee he had encountered at the company earlier. The boss has a special habit. Every weekend, he personally inspects the Toy City because he knows that customers' most genuine reactions are never written in marketing reports. He asks Josh about his feelings towards these toys, and Josh elaborates on the pros and cons of each toy. This is the most authentic experience of a child. Listening to his descriptions, the boss gradually develops admiration for this employee. During the conversation, the two arrive at a ground piano key installation, and Josh jumps up to play without hesitation. The boss also gradually becomes interested. The two begin to play joyfully in front of an audience. The lively dance steps are the trajectory of personal growth, and the simple melody is the laughter of a lost childhood. As the two finish a piece together, the crowd bursts into enthusiastic applause, and the boss laughs heartily. Upon learning that Josh works in the computer department, he thinks it is a pity for such talent to be stuck in that department. and the next day, he promotes Josh to Vice President of Product Innovation. His daily work involves experiencing the company's newly developed toys and then proposing improvement plans and suggestions. Josh not only has an independent office, but the boss also specifically assigns him a female secretary. Billy envies his current life immensely. Unexpectedly, the president of products, who has worked hard in the company for many years, hears this news and is instantly furious. A newcomer who has only been on the job for a week rises to the position of Vice President of Products, which poses a great threat to his status. To make Josh look bad in front of the boss, at the new product discussion meeting, the president deliberately uses a lot of professional jargon that Josh finds difficult to understand, and then asks Josh to share his insights. Josh plays with the new toy in his hand, completely unaware of the data the president mentioned, and then expresses his views on the toy from a child's perspective. Josh thinks that designing the building as a robot is boring. Instead, it would be better to make prehistoric animals into robots, like mutated insects with huge pincers that can lift cars. Children would definitely find that very cool. And this has been his long-held dream. This imaginative idea not only gains the boss's approval, but also instantly captures the interest of the previously drowsy company executives, who all praise Josh's ingenious creativity. What was meant to embarrass Josh instead causes the president to lose face. He believes that Josh is purely there to cause trouble, and from then on, the president holds a grudge against him. Due to the success of the proposed idea, the boss directly rewards Josh with a spacious apartment. Looking at the bright and spacious room, Josh does not buy any furniture, but instead moves in all his favorite toys, playing joyfully every day, living a life that adults envy, constantly eating what adults call unhealthy food and never having to worry about pocket money. During this time, he still regularly writes letters home to report his safety, indicating that this experience is about to end. That evening, the company holds a celebration dinner because the new product sales have met the target. The adults all attend dressed in black formal wear, while Josh wears a pure white tailcoat. Seeing this, the creative president mocks him, saying he looks like a waiter. The boss took the initiative to greet Josh and praised his outstanding attire, which perfectly matched the identity of a creative vice president. Seeing this situation, the colleagues speculated that Josh would be promoted again. At the banquet, while others boasted about their past, and even took the opportunity to confess to female colleagues, Josh showed no interest and focused on enjoying the delicious food at the banquet. Even the most ordinary fruit platter was savored by him. This unusual behavior caught Susan's attention. Susan was a woman influenced by social trends. Regardless of who the company president was, she always managed to secure the position of president's secretary. In addition to her outstanding abilities, she also benefited from the help of her previous stepping stone boyfriends. Her current boyfriend is the creative president. Susan hoped the company would expand several product lines so she could be promoted to a supervisor, but her idea was directly rejected by the boss. To solidify her position, Susan set her sights on Josh, hoping to achieve her goals through him. Susan first expressed admiration for Josh's creativity, then excused that such business banquets were boring and suggested going for a walk with Josh. Josh had long wanted to leave the boring party. Thus, the two left early under the watchful eyes of everyone. It was Josh's first time riding in a stretch luxury car. Susan seemed to intentionally or unintentionally confide in him about the loneliness of life, longing for someone to relieve her. However, Josh was only interested in things outside of Susan. Before Susan could continue, he urged her to get up, and together they leaned out of the car's sunroof to enjoy the pleasures of the world, listening to car horns and feeling the breeze on their faces. In Josh's perception, fun was everywhere, and making friends was quite normal. Therefore, when Susan suggested wanting to spend the night at his place, Josh not only agreed without hesitation, but naively expressed that he wanted to be on top. The two had vastly different mindsets and understandings. But when Susan walked into the room, she was shocked by the sight before her. This was clearly a children's kingdom, completely lacking the appearance of an adult residence. Josh first showed her various toys and then invited her to play on the trampoline. At first, Susan showed a face of resistance, but under Josh's enthusiastic invitation, she finally let go of her adult reservations and played excitedly like a child with Josh. That night, they played with all the toys. When it was time to sleep, Susan suddenly felt nervous. She first exposed her legs, felt it was inappropriate, and then changed to a sexy pose. Susan was clearly anticipating something to happen, but after washing up, Josh directly jumped onto the top bunk, and only then did Susan understand the true meaning of what he said about being on top. To make up for Susan having to sleep on the bottom, Josh gave her a glow-in-the-dark compass ring, hoping it could guide her in the dark and prevent her from feeling lost. Josh's innocence was like a clear mirror, reflecting Susan's own hypocrisy and making her feel particularly at ease. That night, Susan experienced an unprecedented peaceful sleep. Until the next day, she was still immersed in that pleasant feeling, mimicking Josh by playing her favorite car music and swaying her body to the melody. But this childish behavior was reprimanded by the president beside her, causing Susan to become flustered like a child. Hearing the word child, Susan thought of that pure-hearted man and couldn't help but smile. This made the president even more unwilling. He could accept Susan's past transactional relationships, but he could not tolerate Susan giving her heart to someone else. So he took the initiative to find Josh, wanting to undermine Josh's confidence through a tennis match. The president initially wanted Josh to embarrass himself in front of Susan, but unexpectedly, Josh's skills were superior. In a fit of rage, the president directly confronted Josh, pinning him to the ground and rubbing him against it. Afterward, Susan carefully tended to Josh's wounds. Josh was puzzled as to why the president hit him. Susan explained that the workplace is like a battlefield where everyone except oneself is an enemy. Josh was still confused. Susan worked hard too, so why was she so nice to him? Because aside from his mother, this was the first time a woman had been so considerate of him. A vague feeling began to rise in his heart. However, his words also stirred ripples in Susan's heart. Then, Susan gently kissed Josh. A strong current instantly coursed through Josh's body, exciting him for the entire afternoon. In the evening, just as Josh was about to finish work, he saw the boss still pacing in the office, seemingly troubled by something. Curious, Josh knocked on the door to find out what was going on. It turned out that the boss had been troubled by one thing. The toys he made could never impress 13-year-old boys, as boys at that age were only thinking about girls their own age. Josh suddenly widened his eyes upon hearing this, because in a few days, he would turn 13, and yet the woman on his mind was 10 years older than him. Soon, Josh welcomed his 13th birthday. He celebrated with his best friend Billy, which also meant that his childhood phase was about to end. After leaving the restaurant, Billy wanted to spend the whole day with him, but he stated that he had made plans with someone else. No matter how much Billy tried to persuade him, it was futile. It seemed that this childhood friend was no longer that important. It turned out that the person Josh was meeting was Susan. From then on, the two often went to the amusement park together, riding roller coasters, taking the Ferris wheel, and dancing to melodious music. In their affectionate feelings, they established a romantic relationship. That night, 13-year-old Josh officially became an adult. As he grew up, he was successful in everything he did. From that day on, Josh no longer drank milk, but switched to black coffee. He no longer read comics, but started reading sports newspapers. He no longer treated toys as entertainment, but viewed them as work. He spent 24 hours a day, 12 hours busy with work, and another 12 hours in a relationship with Susan, which caused him to miss several appointments with Billy. The relationship between the two deepened, and Susan even brought Josh to meet her parents, who were very pleased with this prospective son-in-law and urged them to get married soon. Josh gradually became a successful person, thriving in both career and love, until Billy appeared, forcing him to face reality again. It turned out that Billy had long received a report from the Consumer Affairs Department and had called multiple times to share this good news with Josh, but was repeatedly hung up on by the secretary, citing that Josh was busy. With no other choice, Billy had to go to the company in person. At that moment, Josh was still dealing with work and impatiently told Billy not to disturb him, speaking with a completely indifferent, work machine attitude. Seeing Josh being so dismissive, Billy angrily hung up the phone that Josh was using. He reminded Josh that this was just an experience, but Josh completely ignored him, insisting that his call was very important. In the past, however, he had regarded his friend Billy as the most important person. Seeing Josh turn out this way, Billy could only leave in disappointment. Josh watched his close friend leave and suddenly felt a sense of loss. That night, Josh opened a game on his computer, one that he and Billy often played, with each level filled with beautiful memories. He finally realized that he was essentially still a child. The next day, he went to the familiar neighborhood and saw children excitedly throwing dry leaves in the street. He saw classmates reluctantly taking graduation photos on campus. He saw boys happily swinging baseball bats on the playground. He suddenly felt that this was the life he should have, and he shouldn't miss out on the 10 years of gradual growth. After a day and night of deep reflection, he decided to confess everything to Susan. But Susan believed this was just an excuse for him to evade responsibility and refused to listen to any explanation, leading to a heated argument between them. However, the next morning, Susan discovered the card ejected by the wishing machine in Josh's home. Reading the words on the card and recalling the scene from her first visit to Josh's house, she began to believe that what Josh said might be true. Meanwhile, Billy had also calmed down. He called various amusement parks one by one, and after multiple inquiries, he finally learned the whereabouts of the wishing machine. Then, he burst into Josh's office and placed a note with the wishing machine's address on Josh's desk. Whether to return to the past or continue living as an adult was entirely up to Josh to decide. After Billy left, Josh hurriedly attended a product launch. This time it was a choose-your-own-adventure electronic comic book designed by him and Susan together. Susan explained the specific product details, with the core selling point being, children can choose the direction of the story, leading to different endings based on their choices. Upon hearing this, Josh, already feeling uneasy, suddenly realized something and quickly made an excuse to leave the conference room. Susan continued to explain the product costs and pricing, while the president deliberately made things difficult, saying that a price of $19 was unrealistic for children. Susan suddenly realized that Josh's product was not a toy designed for children at all. His true target customers were those who had already grown up. Thinking of this, Susan immediately rushed out the door, while Josh had already left in a car. Fortunately, Billy, who hadn't gone far, was still downstairs. He was excited about his dear friend's impending return when Susan asked about Josh's whereabouts. Upon learning Josh's destination, Susan drove off in a hurry. Before long, Josh found the wishing machine, which was located in the amusement park he had visited with Susan. However, that night, Josh was completely immersed in the adult world and paid no attention to the children's toys. The moment he saw the wishing machine, Josh unplugged it to start the machine, inserted a coin, and made a wish to become a child again. Just then, Susan arrived. She hoped that Josh wouldn't leave just like that, but the machine had already spit out a card, and Josh's wish had been granted. Although Josh deeply loved Susan and was reluctant to part with her, he could not abandon his family and friends. Josh suggested that Susan could also return to 13, so they could grow up and fall in love together. But Susan was unwilling to become a child again. She did not want to relive that painful childhood. Though Susan was heartbroken, she ultimately accepted reality. She proposed to take Josh home one last time, giving him a light kiss on the forehead as they parted, as they were no longer in a romantic relationship and could only express a sister's affection for her brother in this way. Watching Josh's figure grow more distant, Susan still felt a heartache that made it hard to breathe. However, when that towering figure transformed into a 13-year-old boy, and when the mature face returned to a youthful visage, Susan felt completely relieved at that moment. They had made a 10-year promise in the car, and perhaps they would reunite in 10 years, or perhaps they would never meet again, but regardless, they were the most brilliant scenery in each other's lives.